On Saturday, April 27th of 2019, President Trump tweeted out the following. The Democratic National Committee, sometime referred to as the DNC, is again working its magic in its quest to destroy crazy Bernie Sanders. For the more traditional, but not very bright, sleepy Joe Biden. Here we go again, Bernie, but this time, please show a little more anger and indignation when you get screwed. Well, it's sad we have a president who calls opponents crazy and not very bright and uses the SCR word. But he has a point to make. There was massive corruption inside the Democratic Party in 2016, which most people for some reason are choosing to ignore. And the head of the DNC, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, was forced to resign her position when WikiLeaks released emails proving that the Democratic National Committee conspired to work against Bernie's campaign. The Democrats that same season also conspired against other progressive candidates down the ballot, including Tim Canova, who just so happened to be Debbie Wasserman Schultz's primary opponent in the August 2016 Democratic primary for a congressional seat in Florida. Here's the story of the voter fraud and corruption.
And some other stuff we're going to talk about. Hi, Tim.
Hey there, Jimmy. How are you?
So good. So tell me about what you're here to talk about. Did something happen with the ballots?
Well, that's true. After the last race, I'll say the last race ended, and we had our doubts about the final tally. The polls were showing me closing fast in the final week. I did not contest the election, but several weeks went by, and a number of election integrity folks started contacting me. They had started to analyze the data. They started to have some real questions. I remember one friend of mine, somebody with the Progressive Democrats of America, he contacted me. He said, it seems very strange. One of the precincts, nobody voted, and in another precinct, 100% of the votes went to Wasserman Schultz. So who knows? There were all kinds of rumors swirling around. I figured, let's do a public records request. Ballots are considered public records, and Florida has a very good public records statute. Something like 6 months went by, and the Broward County Supervisor of Elections just was stonewalling us. So I brought a lawsuit last June, and while the lawsuit was pending, we learned that the Broward Supervisor of Elections destroyed all of our paper ballots and destroyed them in September of 2017 while the litigation was pending.
Now, isn't there a statute that they're supposed to hang on to those ballots
Yes.
for a certain amount of time? How long are they supposed to hang on?
Federal statute says 22 months.
And they destroyed them almost immediately?
Well, no, they waited 12 months to destroy them.
Oh, okay, so 12 months they
Yes,
destroy them. They're supposed to
right.
hang on to them for 22 months.
Exactly. And the state law mimics the federal law. And I mean, these are actually criminal sanctions for violating these laws. And then on top of that, the destruction order that was signed on September 1st of 2017, the Supervisor of Elections was certifying that the ballots were not the subject of any pending litigation. Well, indeed they were, and she was actually the named defendant in that litigation, and we'd already served pretrial discovery requests. So there's all kinds of legal violations that occurred. You've got to ask yourself, why would somebody commit potential felonies, court sanctions to destroy paper ballots?
Running as an independent, because now people don't realize, maybe they don't, maybe they do. If you watch the show, you know that Tim was cheated in the last election, and a federal judge agreed with him, and then he thought we would get a new elections commissioner, and we didn't, because the fix is in. The right and the left got the same donors, and they came together to screw Tim, so he's running as an independent.
And you mentioned it. We had our doubts about the final numbers, so we tried to inspect the ballots, and the supervisor simply threw the ballots out. It was actually a state court, Florida Circuit Court, granted a summary judgment and ruled in the judge's decision, in his order, that the supervisor had violated numerous federal and state criminal statutes. And we, of course, were hoping that she'd be fired, there'd be a criminal investigation. And as you mentioned, none of that has happened yet. And apparently it's because Debbie Wasserman Schultz's corporate backers are also the same backers the Republicans have, and they prefer the status quo rather than a progressive like me getting in and really taking a look at what's happening with the election system.
I have new evidence that some of the voting machines could very well have been hacked. But of course, that's ridiculous, right? If someone tried to hack the machines, the exit polls would be way off, which they have been. Go back and watch our last 8 episodes, all right? And oddly enough, since the exit polls have indicated widespread fraud and things like Exit Poll Gate have been trending online, the TV networks canceled plans to have exit polling in Kentucky, California, and New Jersey. They're like, what do you mean exit polls are way off? What exit polls? There's another reason this crazy vote hacking story can't be true. Voting machines are different in different areas, right? There's different kinds. Some are over 10 years old and very hackable. They're like a speak and spell taped to an abacus, all right? And it's not even happy to see you. But some voting machines are much newer and safer. So if a group of people were hacking the machines, they would do best in areas where the machines flunk hacking tests. And that's clearly not oh, what's this? A 6-part series in counterpunch.org, which I'm holding here in my hand, that says that Hillary Clinton does best where voting machines flunk hacking tests? Oh my God! For example, in South Carolina, where Clinton crushed Sanders, she did way better than even the predictions of her doing way better. All right? And according to NYU's Brennan Center for Justice, South Carolina uses provably hackable voting machines without a verified paper trail. But that's just an example. All told, hundreds of jurisdictions throughout the U.S. use voting machines that have flunked security tests. Those places, by and large, are where Hillary Clinton is substantially outperforming the exit polling. Oh my God!
Now to an astonishing groundswell of hipster support tonight in New York City for presidential candidate Bernie Sanders. Momentum growing, but can it be counted on in the end? Here's ABC's David Wright.
Tonight in the heart of Greenwich Village,
there are a lot of people here tonight.
Bernie Palooza. Tonight, about 27,000 Sanders supporters packed Washington Square Park, one of Sanders' biggest crowds yet. Tonight's rally, a star-studded affair.
Oh, man, it's amazing to be in Washington Square Park.
I'm the designated hype man, Bernie Sanders.
Like a rock concert. A stark contrast to the scene up in the Bronx, where Hillary Clinton had her own rally tonight.
Wow, I am so happy to be back here.
Judging from these two events, you'd be tempted to think this was a Bernie Sanders slam dunk. The big focus here, reaching out to millennials. You must like Bernie Sanders a lot. But a big problem Sanders faces here, can his supporters actually vote here? If you're a first-time voter, you had to register a month ago. And if you're changing parties, you had to do it all the way back in October. So while Bernie Sanders has a lot of supporters, a lot of them may not be able to vote in the New York primary.
If you would like to know who really stole the election, it wasn't Russia. It wasn't Russia. I'm telling you right now, mark my words, it wasn't Russia buying ads on Facebook or Twitter or colluding with Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump. What threw the election was Americans inside America. It was the Koch brothers. It was Goldman Sachs. It's the military-industrial complex. It's Silicon Valley. They buy our government. That is who threw the election. You know who else threw the election? Oh, my God. There you go. New York City's Board of Elections will admit it purged more than 200,000 voters from city rolls. 200,000. That was in Brooklyn. After many Brooklyn residents arrived at the polls during last year's presidential primary to learn they were deemed ineligible to vote, the good government group Common Cause New York filed suit. State Attorney General Eric Schneiderman and the Brooklyn U.S. Attorney Office joined in the litigation. 200,000 people purged from the rolls in Brooklyn alone. You think that's the only place that happened? By the way, New York City's Board of Elections is acknowledging it broke the law. They were willing to break the law to keep Bernie Sanders from winning. And they did it on a mass scale. They didn't do it on a little scale, mass scale. They illegally purged 200,000 people from the voting rolls in Brooklyn. What do you think happened around the country? What do you think happened in Arizona? What do you think happened in California? What do you think happened?
Many Brooklyn residents who thought they were registered showed up to vote, only to find their names were not on the list.